Hi, and welcome to the Outdoor View. I'm Bill Gaines, and I'm your host for today. And I have the pleasure of introducing Kevin Vella with the National Wild Turkey Federation. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. Hey, thanks for taking the time to jump on with us. I'm really interested in learning more about National Wild Turkey Federation, what you're doing nationally, and really what you're doing here in California as well. But before we dive into that, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So, like we mentioned, my name is Kevin Vella. I grew up in Calistoga, California, which is the northern end of the Napa Valley. Grew up farming wine grapes with my dad, my family. Something my family's actually been involved in ever since we came over from Italy. But also with that family dynamic, my entire family is a big group of hunters. So my grandfather, my dad, my uncles, I have 9 cousins in this generation, along with me, and every single one of us have our hunter education, hunting licenses. So the traditional way of becoming a hunter. And so that really drove me into what I wanted to do for a career, which is become a wildlife biologist. So that passion for hunting in the outdoors led me into this career, and went to school at Humboldt State, got a degree, got a few jobs, worked for California Waterfowl for a while, came to work for the NWTF for the last 7.5 years, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of working with you during pretty much that entire 7.5 year span as well, Kevin. And you're one of the best biologists out there, in my opinion. And I appreciate all you've done for ducks and for turkeys and for other critters as well. Hey, tell me a little bit about the National Wild Turkey Federation and what that entity is up to lately.
Sure. First off, thank you very much for the kind words. Really appreciate it. But
Yeah.
the National Wild Turkey Federation is a great organization. We were founded in 1973 by a group of concerned wild turkey hunters with the mission that is the conservation of the wild turkey and the preservation of our hunting heritage. So it's a twofold mission, and both of those are very important for conserving wild turkey and for conserving our hunting heritage and the North American model of wildlife conservation. Most recently, the National Wild Turkey Federation has entered into a Save the Habitat, Save the Hunt initiative. This is a 10-year initiative, and it has 3 goals. These are national goals. The first goal is to conserve or enhance over 4 million acres of upland wildlife habitat. The second goal is to create 1.5 million hunters. And the third goal is to open up over 500,000 acres to public hunting access. We started this initiative in 2012. And very proud to say that last year in 2020, we've surpassed every single one of those goals, which is pretty incredible. 2020, we also, actually 2019, I believe it was, we officially recorded over 20 million acres of wildlife habitat that we've helped to enhance since 1973. So that's the big part of the Turkey Federation. You know, we started out with the project called Target 2000. And what that was that by the year 2000, the NWTF and its partners wanted to have wild turkeys in every suitable habitat in the lower 48 by the year 2000. And due to work with the NWTF, state partners, federal partners, we actually reached that goal. And there's been a hunting season for wild turkeys currently, and for many years now, in the 49 of the 50 states, with the exception of being Alaska. Alaska doesn't have pretty good turkey habitat. So that's kind of the overall gist on the NWTF nationally. Here in California, since the beginning of the Save the Habitat, Save the Hunt initiative, we worked a lot with our federal partners, with the Forest Service, and a lot with California Department of Fish and Wildlife to work on those goals. So those goals of creating more acres for wild turkey habitat, creating more hunters, and opening up public hunting access. So the way that we've helped to do that is, since 2012, the National Wild Turkey Federation has enhanced over 14,000 acres in the state of California, majority of that being on Forest Service lands and State Department of Fish and wildlife areas. So all areas where it's open to public hunting access. Where we've helped to create hunters is through some of our outreach programs. One of those being our Jakes program. Many of our chapters have very awesome dedicated Jakes programs. Our Reading chapter has a Jakes program that's been nationally recognized. And Jakes programs are bringing in youth to come in and learn how to hunt, teach them their hunter education, but not just stopping there. going the full-blown mentoring process into how to become an actual hunter. Our San Diego chapter at the other end of the state's got a fantastic Jake's hunt as well. That's on the San Isabel Preserve. And this is where they actually work with the city of San Diego to conduct a hunt on these lands, which is pretty incredible. And another part is our Wheeling Sportsman program. So Wheeling Sportsman program is a hunting program for folks that are disabled or have been put into wheelchairs or have been disabled through, as active military veterans through active combat. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical disability, but they go through a lot of PTSD stuff too, and we try to help bring them back to the outdoors and bring them that camaraderie that they felt in the service. So we help to do a lot of those things, and how we've helped to open up hunter access is in 2015, the NWTF wrote a grant for opening up a turkey hunt on Upper Butte Basin Wildlife Area. Many of you know that as Little Dry Creek and Howard Slough. So we helped to write this grant. So we're successful in this grant through the Upland Game Bird account with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And since then, I think there's been 2016, I think, was the first spring that we will allow hunters. And since then, I think there's been 150 or so possible spots every year for that. And so we've opened up, I think it's around 4,900 acres to public hunting access. And that's been one of the most popular hunts there is out there. It's through a lottery draw through the state system on ALTS. And it's probably one of the most popular ones to draw. So that's kind of how the NWTF has helped wild turkeys and wild turkey hunters in the state of California.
A million things I could say about turkey hunting in the state. Now, I've been doing this long enough to when I first got my hunting license, there wasn't really any turkeys to hunt in California. There wasn't a turkey season. You just didn't see them. And I remember, I guess it was in the 80s or so, was when they started showing up. And I wanted to go turkey hunting so bad. And I remember the day I killed my first turkey, and it was like, I think I kind of shot it early in the morning. I think I called in sick to work that day because I was so excited because I'd hunted them for several years and finally killed one. But what's interesting about turkey hunting is I think it's probably the best gateway type of hunt that a young individual or even an adult that's just getting into hunting can take part in. It's great for kids, even young kids. Great for the disabled. You mentioned your Wheeling Sportsman program, which I've got a tremendous amount of respect for. As you know, my youngest daughter, who's in a wheelchair, was actually one of the stars, if you will, of a Turkey Federation program 10 years ago or so that focused on the Wheeling Sportsman program. And she went turkey hunting, of course. And with the help of like 5 people, we carried her down this steep, rocky hill, got her in the turkey blind. And once she was in the turkey blind, she was good in her wheelchair, right? And we had a great hunt and she could be part of it. In fact, she's joined me for several turkey hunts over the years. Turkeys just lend themselves to allowing people that could not, go out on a real nasty deer hunt or elk hunt or pheasant hunt or whatever, but they can hunt turkeys. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more exciting. I remember when that first gobbler started gobbling and coming in on the spring season a few years back. To me, it was like your heart gets pumping. You feel like you're a 9-year-old all over again. And once you get them in, I mean, you're a chance of being successful on harvesting one are pretty good. It's not like trying to hit a teal, or something like that. So no, turkey hunting is a great entry, if you will, species for hunting. And I think what the Turkey Federation has done, to get the disabled out there, the veterans out there and so forth is really phenomenal. But the success of turkeys as a species in California, I can't think of any better story ever when it comes to game species. I mean, they're everywhere now. You guys have done a great job, and they do a pretty good job on their own too, right?
Yeah, it's hard to take credit for that. Turkeys are they're generalist species. They're very opportunistic, and they do really well in kind of those fringe habitats where you're kind of on the edge of the wildland urban interface and kind of on the edges of these neighborhoods and ranchettes. They're really smart birds. They figure out where they can be safe, and they'll expand their territory based on that. So yeah, it's fantastic to see the amount of opportunity that's out there for wild turkeys. It's a little bit of a bummer for, some of the neighborhoods that have a bunch of wild turkeys in there causing a bunch of nuisance issues, but that's just how they're going to be. I mean, they're really smart. They're gonna find a way where they can get into areas with, plenty of forage opportunities and a lack of predation, and they're going to thrive in that.
And turkeys, as you very well know, is the only game species that I can think of anyway that you can actually hunt with a pellet gun. Right. And one of the reasons why the Department of Fish and Wildlife put that regulation in place, as is because some of these neighborhoods that you're talking about where you're not going to shoot a shotgun there, right? And bow is probably not a good idea, but you can hunt them with a pellet gun, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of the few game species, especially that large of an animal, to be able to take with an air rifle.
Right. Not that it's an easy shot, because you've got to be able to pretty much thread the needle hole on something like that. But
yeah. And to touch back on what you were talking about wild turkey hunting being one of the best gateway introductions into the hunting world, I completely agree. They're a very, very vocal bird, especially in the springtime when they're coming off the roost and sitting up on the roost. Just lots and lots of vocalization, not just gobbling, but all the hen vocalizations as well. And then you got that interactive part of it where you're calling, they're responding. And that's stuff that gets folks really fired up, man. You're actually out there interacting with wildlife, which is pretty dang cool. And like you said, to have that first one come in, gobbling, you can hear them, spitting, drumming, and all that. When they're real close, it makes your heart beat out of your chest. It blurs my vision. I've been doing this for a little while, and I still, completely lose my mind every time it happens. So, I think it's a great gateway for kids and even for, like you said, even adults that are getting into it. It blows people's minds when they get it to happen right.
It really does. And when I took my first one years ago, I remember I was breathing so hard. I had a buddy of mine, because I was just learning how to turkey hunt, and he was on the calls, right? And this bird, there was a bunch of brush, probably about 80 yards out, and we could hear him gobbling. We knew he was in there, and all of a sudden out he steps and he starts coming in. I was breathing so hard, when he started coming in, that he still gives me a bad time about that, right? And I wasn't a 12-year-old at the time. I was probably, I don't know, 40-ish, right? But it really got my heart pumping. And I've harvested a bunch of turkeys since then, but like you just said, it still gets my heart pumping when they start fanning out and they start gobbling and they start strutting and doing all that cool stuff and drumming. And oh man, it's something you can't explain it. You just have to go out and live it, right?
Yeah. And whenever that stops, it's probably time to quit.
Yeah,
I don't think it's worth it anymore. But yeah, it's a pretty incredible thing to happen to you.
And and like a lot of game species, they are phenomenal eating birds too, right? Once you clean them up, they don't look like the butterball in the Safeway, because they actually work for a living, right? But they are really fine eating birds. You can scratch up a few good recipes for those, and they're pretty tasty. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot of favorites. With the turkey breasts, we really like to do schnitzel, which is just essentially sliced thin, pounded, breaded, and quick fried in butter. Oh my God, it's good. With the legs, just doing them low and slow in the crock pot or braising them and then pulling them for carnitas. It's amazing. And then we've been doing actually pate the last few years with the livers, and that's been turning out pretty dang good too. So there's a lot of things that you can utilize on a wild turkey that I think in the old days people would just say, take the breast, throw the legs out, because they were too tough. But once you understand how to, cook all the different components, it's amazing. It's a fantastic bird to eat. And we like to, unfortunately, we don't have much in the freezer because we'll eat it so quick. It rarely even gets in the freezer in the springtime. So hopeful that we can, bag a fall bird coming up here, because you look at the grocery store prices of turkey right now, it's pretty insane. So hopeful that we can put one on the table from the wild.
One of my buddies, because I was struggling, because the legs, they don't look, like I say, the legs and thighs certainly don't look like a butterball, right? Because they definitely work for a living down in that part of their body. And he told me just what you said. This several years ago. He goes, Billy goes, just slow cook them. And he wrote me out his recipe and he gave it to me, and it works. And like you say, it is just kind of just peel all that meat off, and it's just fantastic. And the breasts, of course, are easy. I mean, they're just not quite as big as the store-bought, but there's plenty of breasts there. There's a lot of meat on those birds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing great stuff on the ground for sure. I mean, you talked about your habitat numbers and what you've done in acreage and so forth and so on. And again, I've had a pleasure of working with you here and there on some of that stuff. and I don't think there's any organization out there that does as good of a job when it comes to working with the youth, like with your Jake's program, which, by the way, is a great name for that program. And with some of our viewers, if you don't know what a Jake is, that's a young male turkey, right? So, you get these young kids out there. I call them the Jake's program. It's just absolutely perfect, and then with the disabled, like I was talking about earlier, and the other people that you're helping to get out in the field. I mean, you're doing a fantastic job on that. But you guys are also, working hard to fight some of the policy decisions out there, right? So that hunters can continue to go out in the field and game or wild game species can continue to be managed based on science and so forth. So I know you're active politically as well, which you really have to be these days if you want to protect the future of conservation and hunting in California and beyond.
Yeah, no, as you mentioned, California is always kind of the epicenter of a lot of these laws, and they a lot of these anti-hunting groups will go straight through the state legislature and completely bypass the Fish and Game Commission, which, as you know, Bill, is the governing body that's supposed to set fish and game laws. And that's where you really get into issues. We've seen that a lot in the last couple of years with, the bobcat hunting bill, the trapping bill, the outline of hounds for bears in 2012. And it's just been a gradual process of things getting taken away. So the policy world is something that we really all have to be incredibly engaged in, because that's where we're going to lose a lot of this stuff. And then wildlife management goes out the window when there's no funding coming in to actually manage these species. So it's very, very important. So yeah, we work a lot with you and other organizations through the California Hunting and Conservation Coalition, where we meet with the department, meet with the Fish and Game Commission staff, and everyone quarterly to talk about different issues. We also are very active in the Fish and Game Commission. As you know, Bill, I've come in there and helped represent the National Wild Turkey Federation on several positions that have to do with upland wildlife management and then hunting heritage as a whole, because as we talked about in the beginning, the second part of the NWTF's mission is the preservation of our hunting heritage. That's not just wild turkeys, that's our hunting heritage in general. And then also at the Capitol, these legislative sessions have turned into something that, we really got to be active in. It's been a little bit different going remotely and digitally into that world. Right. But, back before that, there were several times where I appeared in a suit and tie. I never thought I'd do that as a biologist. Appeared in a suit and tie in the state capitol to testify on behalf or opposition of certain bills in the state legislature. And like we talked about, if we're not all very active in that, that's where we're going to lose things right there. We're going to lose it for our hunting heritage. We're going to lose it for the wildlife, because we're going to lose our funding for wildlife. So it's really important, and the NWTF has taken a big stance in that for sure.
No, absolutely. And like you say, the Turkey Federation is not only active in trying to protect a strong future for turkey hunting, it's all hunting out there, regardless of what type of species that you may be in pursuit of. You mentioned we've lost the ability to use dogs for bears. We've lost the ability to hunt bobcats. We had a major threat this year when they were trying to take away the ability to hunt bears at all in the state of California. So as you mentioned, we're like the tip of the spear out here. California has become so heavily urbanized so rapidly that our capital is basically overwhelmed with legislators that represent urban districts. That, you talked about how you grew up hunting and your family grew up hunting. I was the same way. Most Californians aren't like that anymore. I mean, they don't know anybody that hunts. They have had no exposure to hunting. And the only really thing they know about hunting is probably what they see on the news or reading the papers. And as you know, that's not the positive stories of you going out with your wife and child or anything like that. It's the negative stories about a poacher, not a hunter, out there breaking the laws. And boom, that goes on the national news or the local news papers. And that's the only exposure they get, right? So yeah, we're fighting an uphill battle here in California, but with the help of the Turkey Federation and getting all the other conservation organizations in lockstep with us through the Hunting and Conservation Coalition and other avenues here in California, we've done a pretty good job of holding our own and trying to keep those decisions out of the state legislature. And like you say, keeping them in front of the Fish and Game Commission, who was created by the legislature to make wildlife management decisions, right? So yeah, we're on much better, solid, science-based ground over there, and that's where we need to have those decisions come up. So appreciate the Turkey Federation being active on the political front as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you, Bill. I mean, you've been the man the whole time behind the scenes, making sure that we're trying to keep our hunting heritage there. So really appreciate everything you've done for that. One thing you mentioned is kind of the organizations coming together. And I think that's a really, really important part. And I think that's where we've done a really good job here recently with the coalition, because united we stand, divided we fall. We all need to come together in support of one another for our hunting heritage. And I think that we're in a good spot for that right now. And we need to see that continue.
Yeah, we made a lot of progress just in the last 3-4 years on that front alone. And in fact, as you know, speaking of gathering together to make progress in policy arenas, I talked to you yesterday about signing on to a coalition letter in support of one of our commissioners who was just reappointed by the governor, has to be approved or confirmed, I should say, by the state Senate, right? And then she's done a great job. She's been there for 8 years now, just got reappointed. And we've got probably 20, I'd have to count them up, I think 20 organizations that have jumped on that letter of support for her confirmation. So that's the kind of thing we can get done when we all unite together and speak with one common voice. Kevin, we talked about the challenges that we're all facing together in the political arena here in California. There's some other challenges that the Turkey Federation is taking on out there, especially in California. What are some of those?
Yeah, Bill. So one thing you look at in terms of some of the biggest challenges that we have in the state of California, especially on the environmental front, is the threat of catastrophic wildfire. That's something that has been getting worse and worse and worse every year. And it's compounded by a multitude of things that kind of have all come together at once. One of those being climate change, another being the suppression of wildfire that was naturally in our forest for the last 100 years. You have the lack of forest management based off of different management desires and objectives from different land management agencies. And you have a lack of industry because we've taken out a lot of our mills and logging sites over the years. And all those things have come together to have this catastrophic effect on our forests, to where we have these mega fires that are putting out tons and tons and tons of carbon into the atmosphere, which, as you know, is not good for climate change in general, but it's also not good for wildlife. We have these giant landscapes that are just becoming moonscaped, that are burning at such high intensities. Not only does it burn the trees, but it burns the upper layer of the soil. It burns that organic layer out. So you don't even have trees that can come up into that for years and years and years. You're just going to have brush. So that's what hurts with sequestering carbon. So all these things have led to really bad things. So how it really hurts wildlife is, like we talked about, it nukes that organic layer in the soil, and you have non-desirable vegetation that's going to come back for many years and years and years. So the NWTF has been working a lot with the Forest Service to help prevent this, and how we can start to prevent it is through active forest management. And a lot of that is the NWTF enters into these stewardship agreements with the Forest Service, or we help to come in as a partner and help them out on these projects that wouldn't get done without the outside help through funding, through added staff capacity, and that sort of thing. So we go through and we help with these forest thinning projects. We're actually removing, sometimes even large enough diameter trees for commercial timber sales. We're removing a lot of the smaller diameter trees and the brush out with these big, heavy masticating equipment that we contract out for. And how that helps with wildlife is it opens up that forest canopy, that super thick forest canopy that was there before, helps open that up so sunlight can come down and grow a lot of the forage species that are really important for things like wild turkeys or deer herds and that sort of thing. So the NWTF is not only helping in terms of creating better habitat for wildlife, but we're also helping in our forest health so that we can start to prevent some of these catastrophic wildfires. And that when fire does get introduced back into the system, because as we know, it's going to happen, it burns these lower intensities, it leaves the larger legacy trees, and it just burns off the smaller brush, the underbrush, and the smaller diameter trees, and actually has more benefit to wildlife versus these catastrophic wildfires that have no benefit to wildlife at all.
Yeah, you notice that not only with turkeys benefit from that, but deer and elk and other species do as well from those, like you say, those low intensity fires. And it's amazing how quick some of the good groceries will start coming up. And, the deer will move in there right away and start hitting on that. And I was talking to Department of Fish and Wildlife leadership a few months ago back about, because we've had some serious catastrophic fires here in California. I mean, it's an annual deal now, right? Burning hundreds of thousands of acres. And the elk herd up in Northern California is starting to migrate into some of these areas where they've never been before, but they're going there now because these fires, some of these lower intensity fires have cleared all old growth brush out, and the new stuff's coming up, and it's great habitat for them. And they found that in a hurry, and now they're starting to move in there, and the deer are coming back as well. So fire's good if it's controlled and done right. So,
yeah, if it can burn at those natural intensities that it's meant to burn at, it's a fantastic management tool.
Right. Now, Kevin, it'd be fair to say that the overwhelming majority of your members are hunters, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and when you talk about all the positive things that Turkey Federation is doing, not only for turkeys, but for other species, both game and non-game, right? And if you've got a happy turkey, chances are you've got a happy whole bunch of other stuff out there because you've got good habitat. And the overwhelming majority of your time, and this is consistent with a lot of the conservation organizations that I have the pleasure of working with, you're fueled nearly entirely by the hunter dollar, and you're spending the overwhelming majority of your time on conservation, call it environmental, call it what you will, projects on the ground, just enhancing and restoring habitat for all kinds of species, not just game species. So, I mean, that speaks well of the hunting and the role of the hunters, if you will, in the North American conservation model that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, conservation is the forefront of our organization, and that's why our organization exists. Like I said, in 1973, a bunch of concerned turkey hunters got together because they were fearful that we were going to lose the wild turkey. We almost lost it at the turn of the century, and they were worried that we were going to go down that same path again. So this isn't, the greedy hunters out there trying to make sure that we've still got stuff to go out and hunt. These are people that deeply care about the outdoors, about their conservation, about their heritage, and making sure that that's there for future generations to enjoy, and not just to hunt, but for everyone to enjoy.
Right. A couple of follow-up comments on that. You mentioned at the turn of the century, and we're not talking 2000, we're talking 100 years ago, turn of the century, right? How hunters stepped up and were the first to notice that, hey, we got problems here, with wild turkeys. You fast forward to 1937, Pittman-Robertson Act, right, which was lobbied for and passed by hunters, basically lobbying for Congress to pass a tax on hunters, because we were the first one that recognized that we were losing habitat out there and something had to be done. And that was almost 90 years ago. And the millions of dollars that PR generates now through the purchase of hunting related equipment, right, is going on the ground. We get over $20 million a year from that federal fund here in California alone. So that's just another example of hunters' dollars going on the ground. And by the way, as you know, I'm sure, but a lot of our viewers don't, the Pittman-Robertson Act was our nation's first environmental law that was ever passed by Congress. First one. Environmentalism wasn't a cool deal back in those days. It was to hunters, but other than that, but we went out and we passed that first law, and it's been working ever since. And there's been several laws modeled after it ever since then. So you've got like the PR hunters' dollars coming in through the excise tax on hunting related equipment. A lot of that comes back to California and gets allocated to the other states. You've got, the money that's coming into your organization through your various fundraisers and so forth, memberships from hunters. But if you want to hunt turkeys in California, what do you need, Kevin? You need a hunting license and you need an upland game stamp, right? So right there, hunting license these days is around $50 here in California. Upland game stamp is a little over 10, I believe.
It's just under 10 now. Next year it'll be just about 20.
Right, I know it's going up. We doubled it, and that law was passed and sponsored by who? Hunters, right? So we basically doubled the price of what we pay for an upland game stamp. You have to have, along with a hunting license, to hunt turkeys, not to mention doves, pheasants, quail, and a whole bunch of other species. We doubled the price of it so we could generate more money for wildlife nesting habitat. Another example of the phenomenal things that hunters are doing through the National Wild Turkey Federation and other means to ensure that we've got wildlife habitat on the ground here, whether it's for game species or not, but here in California and far beyond for generations to come. So Kevin, we talked about hunters playing a big role in the National Wild Turkey Federation. So how do you guys raise your money? Obviously memberships, you raise some there, but you also do events throughout California and beyond as well, right?
Yeah, so we are a grassroots fundraising organization, and we have these fundraising banquets that we have in every state that are just fantastic fun events. And what they are is you get a chapter that put this event on. You get a bunch of people together. You have raffle prizes. You have auctions. It's a great time. Usually, really good food. And you get a chance to win some cool stuff. You can win a gun. You can win some cool gear. And these fundraising banquets, they happen throughout the entire state. And how you can find them and find one near you, you go to our website, NWTF.org. You can type in your zip code. It'll pop up right there. All the events that are within, you can filter it to 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles, however you want to filter it, where they're at in proximity to you. And those are great. Those are how we fund the majority of our mission, which is the conservation of the wild turkey and the preservation of our hunting heritage. So those fundraising banquets are our lifeblood. It's been really tough through COVID to have that, but we've got them going back again. And we're really happy to see that people are coming out strong and really supporting us. So we really appreciate that. You can also just buy a membership on our website. And if you could buy a $35 annual membership, so that's for 1 year, you get a $25 Bass Pro card to be able to spend at Bass Pro or Cabela's. You can spend it at either one. So essentially you're buying an annual membership for $10. And that comes with a Turkey Call magazine that comes every other month, which is a really high quality magazine. We just revamped that up this last year. And then you get a membership to the NWTF, which means that you're helping to provide to our lifeblood, and you are putting money towards our mission. And we put, I think, 90 cents of every dollar that you give us towards the mission of the National Wild Turkey Federation. So really appreciate everything and anything that anyone does to help us thrive, because we're going to help hunters, we're going to help conservation in the state of California and every other state that we're a part of.
Now, if somebody's out there and then they get on your website, they type in their zip code and they realize that we don't have a dinner that's very close. Gee, I want to start one here. They can do that as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can go to the site contact form and say, hey, I want to start a chapter, and we'll get you in touch with the right folks. That's the best way to do it. And yeah, no, we absolutely love it when people want to start chapters and help us out, because that's, like I said, our lifeblood.
Right. Well, Kevin, you guys are doing a great job, and certainly I urge our viewers to, if you haven't been to a Turkey Federation dinner, they are a lot of fun, like you mentioned, and they're family friendly. The kids have as much fun as the adults have. I mean, it's just a great way to spend an evening. It's for a fantastic cause. Like you say, 90% of what you raise goes on the ground. I mean, and it's a write-off. You guys are a 501c3 nonprofit, right? So donations to the National Wild Turkey Federation are also a tax write-off. How can you beat that? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Well, thank you for coming on today, Kevin. Keep up the good work at the National Wild Turkey Federation. I mean, and again, I look forward to continuing to work with you folks, not only out there in the landscape, but in the Capitol and in front of the Fish and Game Commission and beyond, as well, as we continue to make a strong statement for a strong future for conservation here in the state of California.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate everything that you do for hunters in the state of California.
Well, my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you for watching the Outdoor View today. Check in again. We'll be doing other interviews here in the future as we provide your window to our great outdoors. Check us out online at www.theoutdoorview.org.